Welcome, everyone, to another Bros Talking Soccer podcast. My name is Dave Knittel, and this is a podcast where three brothers usually talk about what's happening in American and European soccer, but we are talking about the World Cup or Women's World Cup 2019. It is day 6, Wednesday, June 12th. I'm always forgetting what day of the week it is, and I am joined by our friend Matt Lefler. Matt, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great, Dave. Thanks for having me on here.
Of course. All right, let's get right into things because I know you got to be somewhere in the not too distant future. So real quick, we are a part of the Big Heads Media Network. If you are into podcasts, you want to go check out bigheadsmedia.com. They have over 30 podcasts. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 40. They're constantly adding new podcasts, funny, sports, scary. They got all kinds of stuff. So go check them out. And then we are also a part of stadiumscene.tv. If you are a sports fan, which I think you might be if you're tuning into this, go check out stadiumscene.tv for all kinds of sports content. They have tons of soccer content on there, but lots of other sports content as well. Let's get right into the matches. So first match of the day, we had Nigeria taking on South Korea, and Nigeria ended up prevailing 2-0 in this match. Matt, what were your thoughts on the game?
Well, the game was kind of uglier and prettier than I expected it to be.
So in what ways was it uglier? In what ways was it prettier?
Oh, I didn't realize that the way Nigeria plays was so damn ugly. I remember seeing the stat come up about their passing accuracy in the 68th minute. So we're almost 70 minutes into the game. They've only completed or made 169 passes, and they'd only completed 66% of those passes. Now, on the other hand, Korea played a lot better than I thought they would. I didn't realize there was such a discrepancy in the national rankings or the FIFA rankings for these two. So I know South Korea is ranked, well, it won't be anymore, 14th, and then Nigeria was in the 30s. And really, it was just, but once I got used to the style of the two teams, it was a pretty interesting watch.
Yeah, I agree with that. It was definitely a clash of two very contrasting styles where South Korea actually wanted to possess and pass the ball, which I noted was something interesting to see because we didn't see any of that versus France. And I think a lot of that had to do with France. And then conversely, Nigeria was very direct, very focused on playing the ball long and not necessarily making it pretty. Yeah. So, not at all. Yeah. So I thought both sides were a bit sloppy early in the match. There were some misplaced passes, some miscommunications, and just led to needless turnovers. First thing that I noted was in the 10th minute, and that was the best attack so far of the game. And it was just a simple ball out wide to Ibere, the left back for Nigeria. And she basically was just faster than the South Korean defender. And she just touched it right by her, took maybe another 2 touches, crossed it under a little bit of pressure. And it was just poor defending by South Korea, and Oparanozi had a relatively free header and she hit it directly at the goalkeeper. But that was the first thing I noted. Matt, do you remember this play or have any thoughts on it?
Oh, totally. That was when I realized how much space there was between the Nigerian back line and their forwards. It was like the entire park was between them. I couldn't believe it. And it took me that long to figure out what was so strange about this game. And that was it. There literally was almost no connective tissue play between, the back line and the forward line. They didn't use their midfield. It's like their midfield's only job was to stop South Korea.
Yeah, that's a really good point there. And something that I noted was that South Korea wasn't pressing high at all in the match, or especially not early. And Nigeria were under a bit of pressure, and they didn't kind of use that to their advantage and just sort of like a center back put their foot on the ball or just pass it around the back. It was always, just go forward as quickly as possible. And so I thought that might come back to bite them, and it ended up not. But I thought that they could have used a little bit more composure, whether it was in the back or through the midfield, to just alleviate some of the pressure, because South Korea was really mounting that. 18th minute, this is when South Korea has their best attack, and this came after So Yoon-ji. I think she is the number 10, one of their best players. She played an outside of the football, kind of in behind the defense, and Gum Min Lee had a nice cutback, and she ended up hitting it right at the goalkeeper.
Right.
And I wanted to highlight this because number one, it was a rather good attack for South Korea, but also the ball short hopped the goalkeeper, and she didn't let up any rebound. The goalkeeper's name was Nendozi. She was an 18-year-old making her debut.
Right.
Nigeria switched the goalkeepers, and I thought she had a fantastic match. A lot of saves. She came out relatively strong. She didn't give up a lot of rebounds, and so I wanted to highlight her performance here. Any thoughts on that, Matt?
Well, I mean, to be fair, all the shots that South Korea had were pretty much right at her. It was kind of a perfect game to start your World Cup career in, because there weren't any scary moments that she had to deal with. Every time South Korea got near the box, really, anytime they were dangerous, every shot was directly to the keeper. And I know positioning accounts for a lot of that, but South Korea wasn't doing anything to help themselves.
That's a good point. I think there was only one, and it was in the 87th minute, where she actually made a somewhat diving save. But beyond that,
Right.
yeah, I'm in agreement. South Korea was not nearly clinical enough on the finishing. I thought it was interesting that Nigeria more or less put no pressure on the ball, even when South Korea was in their defensive half. And it was a bold strategy, again, by Nigeria. And South Korea was having some success, but yeah, it was interesting. And South Korea really didn't make them pay, because Nigeria was more or less making it pretty easy for South Korea to play through them.
Well, their defensive strategy was like run fast, kick hard, and the moment they got any freedom in the defense, they would try to go long. And so many of their passes were so inaccurate. They were looking for Odega or Oshwala. And then they were just completely, like I had said before, bypassing their midfield. It was really one of the crazier games I've ever watched, because Nigeria looked like they were constantly panicking, even when they didn't need to panic.
Yeah. No, that's a good analysis there. Oshwala had 3 or 4 fouls within the first 27 minutes. I thought she was a shoo-in to be getting a yellow for persistent infringement, but similar to that Argentine center forward, she ended up sort of keeping her composure and not getting a card. Goal happens in the 29th minute, and it's an own goal. Really unfortunate for South Korea, who was controlling large stretches of the game, and it came kind of against the run of play. But Chikwelu, the number 10 center midfielder for Nigeria, plays a relatively straight ball over the top. And generally speaking, when you're playing soccer and you're playing a long through ball or a ball over the top, very rarely do you want to have a straight ball. It's not easy for attackers to run onto it. And so you generally want to have it on an angle. And so it wasn't necessarily the greatest ball over the top, but it really put the pressure on the South Korean defense. Oparanozi was there putting pressure on as well. And Do-Yeon Kim ends up, following the ball over her shoulder. And she tries to clear it. The goalkeeper's coming out, and she tries to use her right foot, and it ends up coming off the inside part of her right foot when she was trying to use the outside part, going right past her goalkeeper. Oparanozi sticks out her hand, and we can talk about that too. May or may not have deflected off of that and ends up going into her own net. So Matt, what were your thoughts on the goal?
Well, there was just so much weirdness. And here's even kind of another weird part leading up to this goal was right before that. I don't know if it was actually part of this goal sequence or not. I can't remember. But in the 29th minute also, there was actually a wall pass between Ordega and one of the midfielders. Basically, they actually performed a triangle give and go. And I was excited to see it happen, because there was just no midfield use other than that really in the game. And so and then they end up with a goal, like 20 or 30 seconds later. And yeah, it was a terrible play by the South Korean defense. But hey, maybe if they would have used their midfield more, they would have scored more. It was such strange. The tactics were so strange to me.
Yeah, and then so again, for me, it's unfortunate, but Do-Yeon Kim probably should have used her left foot there. And then, what did you think about Oparanozi sticking out her hand? Did you think she did, or do you think she made contact? What were your thoughts on that?
I have no idea why she put out her hand. There is simply no reason for her to put out her hand ever that I can think of. I think she did have mild contact with the ball, like her fingertips hit the ball. It didn't do anything to alter the trajectory of the ball, and I didn't see the spin change in any way. So
you're okay with the goal standing then?
Yeah, I'm okay with the goal standing. But it was a really clueless play. It just didn't make any sense.
I'm in agreement with you on that one. Next thing I really noted was that Cho, the captain for South Korea, was all over the pitch. She defensively, offensively, she was all over the park, and in a good way. And so I wanted to note that. 39th minute, South Korea has probably one of their best chances of the game, and this is where the cross eventually falls to Lee Gyum-min. Again, she had the shot earlier in the game, and she's inside the 6-yard box.
Right.
she's not directly in front of the goal. She's kind of off to the side, but she decides to pass at this point. I don't know what in the world was going through her head. Thoughts on this, Matt?
I was speechless. Yeah. Especially, I mean, I thought she should have shot. And then when I watched the replay, I was like, what are you thinking? Are you just afraid of putting the ball in the back of the net? Is that not your goal? And it was really interesting because Korea at that point was using a lot of effective passing to get around a very porous Nigerian defense. I mean, let's face it, South Korea was not as fast, was not as strong. One thing I wanted to go back to on the potential handball with Oshuala, VAR took forever.
Oparanozi, but yes.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
It did. I actually noted the same thing.
That's right. It's not Oshuala. Yeah. Yeah. It took over. I timed it. It took well over 2 minutes for this to go through. And I was like, all right, you guys. I mean, I actually am a fan of VAR, but I'm not a fan of how it's being implemented in any way. I don't know how to fix it. I don't have any solutions. I'm also not a huge fan of the play on. I think we talked about this before.
With the
offside, yeah.
I actually have that noted because the announcers brought it up in a future game. So let's save that discussion for later. But that's real good because I'm on the same wavelength as you there. The last thing I noted from the half was that South Korea more or less dominated, controlled the game, didn't really generate a ton of chances. Nigeria was sloppy throughout the first half, and I thought that they looked tired defensively, which was which was really interesting. And I think that played into, again, what I touched on earlier about not having on-ball pressure. Nigeria starts the second. Any other thoughts on the first half, Matt, before we go to the second?
Not really. I just was right around at the beginning of the first half, right around the beginning of the second half or end of the first half, I realized that South Korea's plan for Ortega, who, just to continue with the NWSL notes, used to play in the NWSL. Now she's playing for Shanghai in China. Their tactic to defend her was to just foul her. It's every time she got on the ball, they're like, hey, she's dangerous. Let's like lay down the hammer on her. And she was on the pitch a lot. She was fouled. I was surprised that there weren't more yellow cards given out to the South Korean players for how much Ortega was fouled.
Interesting. I completely missed that. I actually noted that I thought South Korea was doing a good job in 1v1 defending. So,
overall.
Yeah, that's a good call out by you though, because I completely that went over my head. Second half starts and Nigeria shoots directly off the tap. Old school FIFA move for all you video game fans out there. Bold strategy. It did not work because these are professionals and it wasn't even close. Right. So I thought that was a weird thing for them to do. We had our first dive of the World Cup, which resulted in a yellow card, and that came in the 49th minute. Ji So-yoon dove. So I wanted to call that out.
She was committed in her facial expression, by the way.
Yes.
Fully committed.
She was selling it. As the game went on, I thought Korea's spacing kind of started to be not as good. I thought they started to get a little bit more condensed offensively. Korea made an offensive-minded substitution in the 56th, double sub. 58th, they scored, but Gyeom-min Lee was offside. It was a really good shot by the South Korea, and then the Nigeria keeper sort of parried it into Gyeom-min Lee's path, but unfortunately she was offside. And the rest of it, I guess we'll get to the goal. Any other thoughts before we talk about the goal?
No.
All right. So then a couple more subs happen. And then in the 75th minute, Nigeria has a fantastic counter. And so this actually was worthy of a World Cup goal and deserving of praise. So the ball sort of pops loose in Nigeria's own defensive half. And Nigeria is just quicker to the ball than South Korea. And then the ball eventually pops free to Okeke. I think it was Ortega that had checked back and sort of shielded off the South Korean defender. I could have the player wrong, but someone on Nigeria came back and sort of shielded the South Korean defender where Okeke was able to collect the ball. She then has a fantastic move around the on-rushing South Korean defender, collects the ball, and then plays in Oshuala, plays this sort of bended ball to Oshuala's run in behind. Oshuala, so strong, so fast, has a South Korean defender on her shoulder, shrugs her off, keeps control of the ball, rounds the keeper, and then from a tight angle finishes. I thought overall Oshuala didn't have a great game, and literally a minute before this, I wrote that she was kind of ineffective, and then she does this, and that's what great goal scorers do. But Matt, your thoughts on the goal?
Well, the interesting thing was It was great to see her power. I mean, she's a very powerful woman, and the South Korean defender really had no chance. I didn't think that trying to muscle her off the ball was the best course of action, just because there's such a size and strength mismatch. I think the only way that she could have played this, but then again, Oshwala was significantly faster than her, but she wasn't necessarily faster than her when she was on the ball, was to try to contain and constantly at least keep her from cutting in and getting a better angle. I also thought the keeper misplayed this. The keeper comes out and then goes down. I understand you want to cut off your angles, but her player went down, which again, I think was a mistake because she was trying to body Oshwala off the ball, which is, like trying to body King Kong off of, I guess, anything. That's a great metaphor. I'm really proud of that one. Anyway, so but it was just strange because there were a couple like minor defensive mistakes I thought in that, but Oshwala handled it. For her to deftly touch that into the net after the complete gong show that was the Nigerian play, like bad touches, bad passes, passes too hard, bouncy passes, and they just weren't good. And then really to put that in the goal like that was pretty surprising, and it was great. It was really nice to watch.
Yeah, she really showed her quality. I believe she plays for FC Barcelona. So, that quality is shining through there for someone who I hadn't been impressed with her throughout the World Cup up until that point. And so props to her for getting that. 87th minute, Yeomin Ji has a really nice shot. She settles and turns. It's about 10 yards out, and it's going for the far post, but Ndozi has a diving save here and doesn't give up a rebound. So this is the one, Matt, that I referenced earlier where she actually had to move to make a save. Right. Nigeria, I thought throughout did a really good job to block South Korea's shots, and they were putting their hands behind their back and just going after the ball fearless. So I thought that was really brave defending from them. And that was kind of the last things I noted from the match. It finishes 2-0. Any other thoughts from this match?
It's going to be ugly for Nigeria anytime they play any kind of an opponent with any kind of strength, because their only thing is pace and strength, and then hope that works out. Beyond that, then there's not a whole lot of anything else. So we'll see that going forward.
Yeah, and they have France next, who can match them up on the strength easy. And pace front. So that'll be an interesting match to follow. Ends 2-0. Let's talk about the next match, which was Germany versus Spain. This finished 1-0 to Germany. Unfortunate for me because I have been a big proponent of Spain. I was really excited about them, and it was I was left with things to be desired at the end of it. But the game starts. Germany's all the pregame stuff had a 4-3-3, but they really came out in a 4-4-2, and Spain was in a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, however you want to classify that. The one thing I noted that was weird about the lineups was that Oberdorf was playing in midfield today. And the reason that this was odd is because last match, she came in at, I want to say, halftime as a center back. They pushed Hegering to midfield, and they rearranged their whole lineup to kind of accommodate Oberdorf as a center back. And in this match, they kept Hegering as a center back, and they put Oberdorf in the midfield. So I thought that was a really odd decision. Matt, any thoughts on that?
No.
Okay. So yeah, and that's strictly based on, again, I'm fairly new to watching all of this, and this is only based on, my knowledge of the World Cup, but I thought that was an interesting decision. First half starts, and from the opening kick, Spain intercepts Germany's pass forward and plays a fantastic through ball curved pass in behind the German backline, and the German keeper almost comes off her line, Manuel Neuer style, and clears it because Spain was in there, and that was kind of a telling sign of the way that the first 25 minutes or so would go. Matt, did you have thoughts on this play?
Well, it was really interesting to see Germany kind of get caught off guard by Spain's speed. I was surprised that they were surprised because, German sides are generally so incredibly drilled and prepared. For them to be caught off guard by that was not something that I had expected. So, but then it was great to see going forward because it was super exciting.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that had to do with Garcia, the player that I highlighted, actually playing center forward. That was what I wanted to see. So a little pat on my back because I called that one. And Hermoso could drift. I pat on my back, but I mean, it didn't end up working out. So,
she had a pretty good game.
she had a great game of getting into dangerous situations and then not finishing.
Okay,
So,
fair enough.
and I'm being fairly harsh on her, but it was frustrating, being I guess a 10-day-old Spain fan. Um, it was frustrating because I thought that they deserved more from this match, and the center forward kind of let them down. 6th minute, we have a Spain long ball, which again was the theme for where Spain's most dangerous chances came, and it was straight to Garcia, and Germany has a poor clearance. This came after a Germany poor clearance, but on the breakaway, she waits too long and ends up just getting closed down. And so it's a long ball over the top. Germany kind of hits it into her. I think it's Oberdorfer hits it into Garcia. She then has a breakaway and should have shot one shot before.
Yes.
And that was indicative of numerous chances that she had. Thoughts on this play, Matt?
It was interesting watching her dribble with her head down and then how much slower she was when she was on the ball. It was so strange because it seemed, and I know there's no way that this is the case, but it seemed almost like she was uncomfortable being out there alone with that much of a breakaway, or maybe she felt pressure that wasn't there. I have no idea. This is pure speculation on my part. I'd seen her be faster on the ball than that in this game, and I don't understand why she slowed down that much. And I don't understand why she didn't take a shot. And I didn't understand why she didn't look up to see where the keeper was.
Yeah, all of the above kind of apply there, and I'm in agreement. I thought that specifically she should have shot one touch earlier. 8th minute, this is where I noted Gavin was listed in the lineup as playing left back, but she was not. She was all over the pitch and more or less ended up playing right wing, and Schweers was actually playing at left back. And so again, the German, I guess, lineup that was submitted and kind of posted on social media was not really indicative of that. So I thought it deserves calling out here. I thought that Germany was trying to play very direct, almost too direct early on. And I know Spain was, their possession style, but I thought Germany, again, through the first 25 minutes or so, was just not possessing, was sort of playing exactly what Spain wanted them to, and sort of not playing of, a World Cup favorite. Matt, did you have any thoughts on the way Germany was playing early on?
Well, I did note that it took till the 28th minute for Germany to build up any momentum, because at that point, Spain had 60% of the possession. I also wanted to point out that up until then, the ref was basically allowing arm pulling like crazy. I don't have any specific instances of it, but there were numerous ones where somebody would start to pull away, and then there would just be an arm turn. You could see their upper body, their torso get turned. Now, granted, the player would let them go, but a lot of times if that's continually happening, the level that it was happening, it's usually called a foul in matches that I'm familiar with. So I was surprised that it happened so often.
That's a good call out. 14th minute, the ball is played over the top. A lovely chipped ball by Hermoso onto Garcia. And in this instance, Schultz doesn't come out, and Garcia has a wide open chance about 12 yards out. She does the right thing with using the outside part of her right foot to try to curve it around, or she should have used her left foot. That was the right sort of angle to take, but she completely mishits it, and it goes wide. And the broadcast pointed out, if you're playing a team of this quality, the Germans aren't going to give you tons of opportunities. You need to take your chances when you get them. This was another instance of Garcia getting into a dangerous spot, but simply not converting. Matt, what did you think of this?
Well, on this play, Garcia actually was looking up to see where the keeper was. The keeper played it very poorly. She actually should have come out and cleared that ball because she had the opportunity to do that and saw it. It was obvious that the ball was going to go by her defense and that Garcia was on goal. I didn't understand why Garcia didn't go for a chip here, like just a calm little chip, because like I said, she was looking at shoot on the ground.
So given that she couldn't execute some shots earlier, a chip is a move that a lot of confident players make. And I think that I don't know how that would have gone down if she couldn't kind of hit a normal shot, relatively speaking. So that might have been, the better strategy, but that probably was playing in her mind, I don't know.
I know I would have gone for the chip, and everybody can tell that I'm like the world's greatest striker. So
absolutely. Yes. We record live on YouTube. You can see us and all our glory. 25th minute is where everything changes for me in this match. Yeah. There's a head injury to Garcia, who again was very influential, very impactful. I thought she was doing a great job, just not finishing. And what this allowed Germany to do, you actually saw them all get together in the middle of the park. They got into a little circle and they were chatting with each other. And I thought that that just gave them more composure. And from then on, Germany, though they weren't dominating possession, they looked more comfortable. And up until that point, it was kind of all Spain, and things really changed after that. Matt, did you notice this or any thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, it was. Excuse me. It was basically like a car turned around and was driving the opposite direction. Um, I didn't look for. I'm not the best, honestly, at figuring out tactical changes. Like I can notice formational changes and stuff like that, but it seemed like Germany was trying to possess the ball more and then work through the Spanish midfield, which was pretty open because Spain was pushing players high. There was space, kind of like Nigeria, between the back line and then the midfield and then forward lines. So there was space there to operate in. Initially, Germany wasn't using that, but as soon as they started to, that's when the game I thought changed.
Absolutely, and I'm in agreement. They flipped from playing overly direct. I think they were still
Right.
playing somewhat direct, but they were possessing a little bit more. I thought that Spain, switching gears back to Spain, I thought that Spain was having pretty good success with those kind of long balls and generating attacks when they kind of generated them from deeper in midfield. But the second Spain had periods of possession in the final third, they just couldn't break Germany down whatsoever. They
Right.
didn't have that clinical center forward, and that was the case throughout the match. And this is another case. So 40th minute, I noted Pop wasn't involved. Going back to our Nigeria, South Korea, I noted Oshuela wasn't involved. And then right after I write that down, Pop is involved in the goal, and that's what great forwards do. So 42nd minute, Germany gets their goal. It's a ball over the top by Gosling to Huth, who takes it end line, and Huth then crosses a perfect cross into Pop, who gets a good header onto the ball. So it's saved by Danos. Do you know the goalkeeper's name for Spain off the top of your head? If not, I'll look it up. But it's saved by the Spanish goalkeeper, and the ball squirts across the line. It's not the greatest save, but she kept it out of the net, and Torion is back on the goal line, the right back captain of Spain, and for some reason just hesitate. I think she thinks that the goalkeeper is going to come claim the ball, but then Dobritz just sort of runs in and just bundles the ball home because Tarion doesn't clear it. Matt, what did you think of this goal?
So, just so you know, that's going to be my save of the day because I actually thought that was a great reaction save. That's one of those things where your job is to save the ball and then prevent it from going in the net, and then it's your defense's job to clear it. And frankly, the defense, Torian, should have been able to clear it. She just kind of jogged up and then thought she was going to get it. I don't know if she was shielding. It was the strangest goal. It should not have been a goal. I think I sent you a text and said that was a stupid goal.
Yes, you did. I can confirm that. Goalkeeper's name is Panos. My handwriting
Panos, okay.
is
I
terrible.
couldn't remember which one it was.
Wasn't even close. Not Davos, like I said initially. So Panos with the good save. And yeah, I'm in agreement. I don't know what they were thinking. This was somewhat against the run of play based on possession, but
Right.
again,
Completely.
from the 25th minute on, Spain wasn't exactly creating chances with their possession. And that was more or less the last thing I noted from the first half. Any other thoughts from the first?
Just a couple things where like Huth, she had an opportunity in 32nd minute. She was dribbling toward goal near the 18, and then she decided to shoot when she had two runners wide open to her right, and she didn't use them. She didn't even look. Her head was down. I noticed that sometimes on the corners, how Spain was dealing with the larger German size was the Spanish players would bunch up. And so they would kind of do sort of a long, I don't know, sort of like an oval shape kind of, but it prevented the German players from being in the center of them. So actually there was a spot where if they placed the ball right, the German players would have difficulty getting into that space. The problem was the ball was never placed there, like remotely. So I thought, hey, that was a great way to actually deal with the size difference. And then Spain could come out with it because they weren't using short corners, which was strange given their technical acumen and their size difference. But that was one thing that I noticed. It was only on a couple corners, but I thought it was a cool tactic. So, and then in the 41st minute, Hermoso pulls like a great futsal move where she pushes the ball forward with her foot, immediately pulls it back, and then goes behind. goes behind her body and then turns with it and then makes a great pass.
Yeah,
So
she was silky on the ball in a lot of different instances, so I was impressed with her throughout. Germany makes a sub at half. Heinrich comes off. Bull comes on, who I thought I was pretty impressed with her play up top. She went up top, and Gvin ended up moving to the back line right back. 49th minute. This is ultimately called offside, but Garcia has a fantastic chance yet again and puts her header wide. And I'm not certain that it would have been called offside after video review, but again, she needs to hit the target. I don't care if it was called offside. Because it wasn't called offside until the ball went out of play. I think, this is just another instance. Then this is where the commentators mentioned the offside flags, Matt. And so I wanted to talk about it here.
Wait a minute. Was that in the 48th minute where she was called offside?
Yeah, 48th, 49th. Yeah, right around there.
Okay, so she was not actually offside because the German defender played the ball.
Yep. No, and that's why. Yeah, and that's why I called this out.
All right.
Yeah, we're speaking the same language here, but and that's not a. So what's happening at the World Cup is I'm trying to think of the right way to set this up. Lineswomen have been instructed to hold close offside calls until the play sort of finishes out or the attack sort of stops, and then flag it if they think it's offside. And the idea is that you can always check in VAR, but if they flag it initially, the referee should more or less blow the whistle, play will stop, and they can't really check to see if it was in fact offside. So that is the goal of this. And so what that is intended to do is if a player is marginally offside, if it's a foot or so, or even within a yard, you let the play go and then you can figure it out. What's happening with, and I think some officials are using this correctly. Then we have other sets of officials that are more or less, if a player is 3 to 5 yards offside, they're still holding their flag. And that's where, again, I think that it's being interpreted differently, this rule. And what needs to happen is the marginal offsides need to be let go. But the ones where it's so clear offside, they need to flag this because it's additional miles on women's legs. There's risk of injury. There's all kinds of things that can happen for no reason when it is so clearly offside. So that's where I stand on it. Matt, what did you want to say about this?
I feel exactly the same way. I'm concerned. I don't like it in either game. It doesn't matter if it's men or women. I think it's going to cause more injuries. I think people are going to play harder. The most dangerous spot on the field is right in front of the goal anyway, because people are just so frenetic and they're going so hard to either prevent or create a goal. So I think you're going to have more keeper injuries. I think you're going to have more sprained ankles. I think you're going to have more cleats into thighs from unnecessary slide tackling and such. So I think it'll eventually get changed. I understand the spirit of it because they want to know the only way it's actually reviewable is if a goal is scored. And so then they can go back and say, hey, let's look at it. Oh, that was offside, but there was a goal scored. So now we can VAR it. But it's not VARable if like you were saying, the assistant referee calls an offside. So yeah.
Yeah, and so again, I get it for tight calls, but the ones that are just so clearly offside, they need to flag it earlier. Lucia Garcia comes on in the 59th minute for Spain, and she's a player that I was hoping to look out for, and she was somewhat dangerous on the wing, but Germany did a pretty good job of nullifying more or less all of Spain's attacks throughout the match. I thought Hermoso was drifting, but she was more or less drifting to the right side of the pitch, and she kept doing, I know she's their creative hub and she wants to get on the ball, but she was standing like 5 yards from players, and her being in those positions was not helping whatsoever. And then what was happening is the front three or the attackers for Spain then weren't coming over in support because they were expecting a cross, and it was just very static and very easy for Germany to defend all of that. Matt, any thoughts on that?
Not really. You're right.
All right. 63rd minute. And this is something that I don't think the broadcast and anyone made a big enough deal about, but Lucia Garcia is played in and takes a fantastic touch and would have been in one-on-one on the goalkeeper, and Schwerz ends up taking her out. Yeah. And she got a yellow card. This was about 20 yards from goal. Yeah. She was about 20 yards from goal, and she ended up getting a yellow card. And I don't think enough was made about this because, in my opinion, this should have been a red card and would have been a turning point. You got 30 more minutes in the match playing against, up a man. Matt, what did you think of this?
Well, it was interesting that it wasn't even considered. And there was, I don't know if you're supposed to, there was a review on it, wasn't there?
I don't think so, because the referee called it.
Okay. So, yeah, I was really kind of disturbed that none of that was brought up, because she had path to goal. This was the final player before being on goal with the keeper. And so, I mean, that's a red card. You're right. That's pretty simple.
Yeah, and so the rules have changed where if you're in the box and you make a play on the ball, you can't get a red card and a penalty kick
Right.
because
Right.
that's considered, multiple punishments. But this, it was outside of the box, and I think you could even argue she didn't make a play on the ball. The
She
ball
didn't
was
look like it.
very clearly gone, and it was a fantastic foul by her at the end of the day. But I mean, if from a German perspective, it was a very smart foul because she got away with it. But that was, yeah, that was something that I thought deserved more. Yeah, from then on out, we had a couple subs. Spain just simply wasn't hitting the target with their shots. Yeah, they had no support. Just going through here, Garcia floating too much. Spain, final product just overall was poor. I thought it was interesting late in the match, like kind of the 80th minute on, Pop ended up dropping to like defensive center midfield. Did you notice that? And any thoughts on that?
Yeah, they were playing more of like a 4-2-3-1.
Mm-hmm.
And then really lining up pretty defensively in that. But it wasn't specifically a low block. It was just to occupy the midfield and then prevent Spain from getting through.
The other thing that I thought, the thing that I thought was that Spain was more or less just hitting the balls into the box, and I think they brought Pop back because of her aerial prowess. So I think that also factored in. Last thing I wanted to note from this match, again, 89th minute, they didn't make a big deal about this on the broadcast, but Hegering takes out Garcia. I mean, Garcia is in again, and she goes down theatrically. Absolutely, that worked against her. But I think that this was a foul, and she had her legs clipped. Matt, what did you think about this play? Was it a foul for you or no?
I thought it was a foul, but that was how the match was being called, so I wasn't surprised. So that's basically where I sit with that. My final thing on the match is that I thought tactically Spain should have, instead of going long balls with a significantly taller defense and team, is they should have tried to play the ball between the midfield and the back line, and then have like one or two runners always like bombing in from the wings or even close, where they could simply use on the ball passes, because every single pass that they were doing in the air, Germany was winning. Even if they were at the height where the Spanish players could win them, Germany was just getting to them because they were stronger and they had a longer reach. With being taller, it's like you have longer limbs, you have longer arms, so you can shield the player more and stuff like that. So that's what I wanted to see from Spain, because there was space between the midfield and the back line for Germany. They just didn't take advantage of it.
Yeah, and they were also too static to add on top of that. Even when the balls were floated in, I mean, they were just too static. Germany prevails. Their World Cup experience kind of shows through and wins 1-0. Last match of today, it was France versus Norway, and this one didn't disappoint. It was a fantastic game. France, the host, ended up prevailing 2-1. I was, Matt, any thoughts on the first half? Just overarching thoughts on the game?
Well, France played in a way, they were so dominant that you would expect Norway to give up, because they were just, how many within the first 2 minutes, France had 2 quality chances, but they didn't give up. They just absorbed pressure. They were calm, they were collected. And then the moment that they had the opportunity to execute their game plan, they did. I did also notice that through parts of the first half that France wasn't really early into the second half, until I kind of had to stop watching. I noticed that France wasn't really pressing Norway's back line very hard. If they were going to press, they were sending one player to press. And so that allowed Norway to kind of set up and then get out of their own end. So by that time, because Norway is good at moving off the ball, so once they got it into their midfield, like around halfway or just over the halfway line, and they were in France's half, that was when France started to press Norway back and then try to win the ball back. But it was a really strange, I thought it was a really strange tactic, because I thought if France, because they're so fast and they're so large, that if France would have pressed Norway higher, they could have probably just pummeled them. But they gave them a free pass. So, but that allowed Norway to kind of maintain their composure and just get some real chances, to actually knock France's off their, maybe to kind of like take some notches out of their confidence or something.
Yeah, so I didn't note it earlier in the match, and by the end of the match, I actually noted that Norway was doing a good job of passing through France's press because I thought that they were pressing effectively, but it may have been, when you weren't following as closely, and so I can't recall it earlier on. So that's really good shout by you. I thought in the right around the fourth minute is when I noted this, and this was true throughout the match. Norway was defending set pieces in a zone, but they were man marking Wendy Renard
Right.
with what's her name, the captain of Norway, Mjelde, who was like honestly almost a foot shorter than her, and she was so her whole she was fearless throughout, and she did a good job of just bodying her and being fearless in it. But I thought that was a really kind of interesting strategy from them. What did you make of that defensive strategy, Matt?
Well, it kind of made me laugh
Yeah,
seeing Renard stand next to her, um, because it was just simply comical. But she always bothered her. She was a gnat. And
absolutely.
Renard probably is used to getting more free headers. I don't know why, because she's the tallest player in the entire World Cup. But so
Yeah, so and I mean it was an effective defensive strategy from Norway there. Ninth minute, Norway has a legit chance. France, had a little bit of overconfidence. They tried to hit it back to their goalkeeper, and Herlovsen comes in and pounces, and the goalkeeper is out. But she was kind of caught between crossing the ball, trying to shoot from an acute angle, and it doesn't amount to anything. But I think that was kind of the first shot across the bow for France. After the first few minutes of domination by France, I thought Norway really grew into the match, and it was a little bit more back and forth, at
they
least
did.
for
Yeah.
yeah, at least for a good period of time, and then France sort of clicked on again. France creating a bit of pressure. I thought Norway had a couple of, oh no, France was creating pressure on themselves. They had a couple of mistakes, miscommunications. They were dribbling back towards their own net and had it poked away. So again, it was, I mentioned it yesterday. France wasn't challenged whatsoever against South Korea, and this was
In
the
the
first
least.
time
Right.
we were going to see how they reacted. And I thought early on, they didn't necessarily react the greatest. And so, that's something for future teams to keep an eye out for. 15th minute, Norway has a corner kick, and they have a fantastic header on target, and Madri is there, saves it off the line. The goalkeeper was right behind her and might have had it covered, but you don't know where that rebound's going to go. And so
Right.
the fact that Madri put it over the crossbar, I thought was a really good save. I thought that Norway was giving away really silly fouls throughout the first half
Oh,
in
totally.
very dangerous
Yes.
spots. So, Matt,
Very.
yeah, what
Yeah.
do you think about that?
I didn't understand why they were doing it. I mean, I understand you want to play France physically and you want to body up, and that's maybe someplace you feel like you have an advantage, or you feel like you're being tenacious to throw them off their game. But when you're doing it in the places that they were doing it, France honestly should have made them pay. So
Absolutely. I know I highlighted Graham Hansen yesterday as a player to look out for. I thought that she was trying to do a bit too much herself initially, and then as the match wore on, she got better at it. But initially, I thought that she was either trying to dribble too much or didn't have the right passing angles or waiting on her passes. So I was happy to see that she, got better with that. But again, I was hoping for just a bit more from her. I thought most of France's dangerous attacks throughout the first half were coming through the right side, specifically Diani, and she was just
right,
winning most of the
she
battles
is
against
so
Minde.
fast.
She was so fast, so strong, able to get by Minde creatively, and they went away from that in the second half. France did, but in the first half, I was really impressed with Diani. 36th minute, there's a cross from Henri, and it goes all the way through to Lesemer, and she cuts it back to the penalty spot. And Tine decides to take a touch here. She absolutely had to hit it first time, and
Right,
Norway
for sure.
yeah, is able to get back and poke it away. And so that was what I wanted to highlight there. I thought it was also interesting that France was defending in a 4-4-2. Their attacking shape
Right.
was a 4-3-3, but they were
Mhm.
defending in a 4-4-2 with Tine staying high with Gauvin. And Tine was kind of that creative attacking center
Mhm.
midfielder. So instead of one of the wingers pinching in and staying high, it was Tine and Gauvin heading up top. Norway passing out of pressure. Well, that's what I have highlighted there. And so did it go into half 0-0? Yeah, it went into half
It
0-0.
did. Yeah, it did. Yeah.
Any other thoughts on the first half?
Not really, but I wanted to point out, and then I got to go.
Yep.
I wanted to point out that the ref, was it Steinhaus? I think that's how you
Yeah.
say it.
Steinhaus, Bibiana Steinhaus.
Yes. Yeah, Steinhaus. So she actually refs in the men's Bundesliga, the top flight in Germany, and she's a great ref. She's fantastic. I've seen her ref numerous Bundesliga games as the center referee, and she does a fantastic job. She commands a lot of respect. it's pretty interesting. I was looking at her bio a bit. She's a police officer, so she's a chief inspector, and she's also in a long-term relationship with Howard Webb. I don't know if you knew that.
Who was also a police officer. I did know all this. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, he was also a police officer and was a Premier League referee from 2003 to 2014. For some reason, I love it when this woman refs. I love how much respect she commands, and she just never gets rattled. She never, ever gets. She's always calm. She's always collected, and she's always composed. And I think that helps her control the games because she doesn't take like a really authoritarian stance, but she's also not to be messed with. Like I've seen her get angry with on the Bundesliga pitch, and then guys are like they're immediately just turning away like, oh no, we can't do this. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great call. I know you got to go. Just real quick, Jeff did have one question. Who is one player who you knew little about or next to nothing about before this tournament that you've been impressed with and that you want, maybe the Seattle Reign, the team that you support, to sign? So who's someone who you've been impressed with that you didn't know about before this tournament?
Graham Hansen. Didn't know anything about her.
There you go.
Her and Hermosa, and then the player who scored for Italy, the 2 goals for Italy. I didn't know anything about her.
Barbara Bonensera. Yeah, I think it's her name.
Yeah, she was. Those are 3. So they've been fantastic. Can't wait to watch them more.
All right. There you go. Matt, I know you got to go. Thank you so much for being here and, at least, being with me so I didn't talk with myself the entire time. So, we'll see you tomorrow. We appreciate it and have a great rest of your day.
All right. Thanks. Talk to you soon.
Yep. See ya. Jeff, I wanted to thank you for interacting with us. If you are listening to the podcast, we record live on YouTube, so you can come interact with me, Matt, and hopefully other guests as we go along here and chime in with your own thoughts, comments, questions. That would be fantastic. So I'll answer Jeff's question after I finish recapping the France-Norway match. So halftime comes. It's still 0-0 for France. And France gets their goal in the 46th minute, basically right out of halftime. And there's a careless giveaway by Norway in the middle of the park. I think it was, I want to call her like Sve, the SV player. She was subbed later and I wrote her down. Savik, I think, had a really careless giveaway where Norway had possession and then they just gifted it right to France. And then France just counters basically directly from that. Lossemer plays it out to Henry, who drives at the defense, gets the right back for Norway to somewhat commit to her. And then she lays it off out wide to Madri. Madri takes a touch and then crosses it into Gauvin, who finishes low. And the one thing that I think was overlooked on this play, because it was great play by France in a lot of different instances, Tine, I think, creates this goal because what she does is she comes across at the near post and shields off the Norwegian center back who could have stepped and cleared that ball. And so Tine doesn't touch the ball because it's kind of behind her, and she makes the right decision to just shield off that Norwegian center back, and that opens the lane for the ball to get to Gauvin. And so she was kind of the unsung hero on this play, and France takes the lead on that. And the next thing I noted was Norway getting back to level, and it kind of came from more or less nothing. 54th minute, Norway has a throw-in on the near side of the pitch, and it's relatively easy thrown into Graham Hansen, who has a bit of space. She works it to the middle to Engen, who I thought had a really good match outside of the thing we'll get to in a minute here, who plays it to Bo Risa, and then Bo Risa slips it into Herlovsen, who has done well to keep herself onside. Slips it in behind the France defense, and Herlovsen crosses a dangerous cross across the face of goal within the 6-yard box, and Wendy Renard on the back post just turns it into her own net in pretty... it just looked optically, it looked very bad because it looked like she just passed it into her own net, and there was under no real pressure. There wasn't someone behind her. She could have used a shout from one of her teammates, or she could have, taken a look. I know it's a dangerous in the 69th minute. That's when a controversial play happens. Engen goes to clear the ball, and she kind of misses the ball and ends up just kicking the heck out of Torrent in her knee, thigh area. And we saw this exact same thing happen in South Africa versus Spain. And it was a little bit different. I think it was a little bit more egregious in the South Africa match. But, nothing was called here. It goes to VAR and ultimately is a penalty. At the end of the day, it's consistent refereeing by the refs. We can, we may not like the call because Engen was making a play on the ball, but at the end of the day, she missed the ball. She was reckless. She really kicked the heck out of Torrent. And unfortunately, Spain, unfortunate from the Norwegian perspective, fortunate from the France perspective, they get awarded the penalty. There's a very long VAR review time. And then even after the VAR, there's a lot of talking and explaining to the Norwegian players. And Lossamer does very well to keep her composure throughout that and ends up slotting the penalty low and to the left. And France takes the 2-1 lead and doesn't let it go. Already mentioned Melda throwing her body around, and she was good on that. And by the end of it, Norway was chasing the match, but France did a fantastic job of closing out that game. Norway just looked sloppy. They looked like they were out of energy, lacking ideas by the end of the game. And, for that reason, France did a fantastic job to close it out, and they were able to prevail. And it was an impressive performance by France, going through that adversity, grinding it out, and getting a win. And so props to them for getting the 2-1 victory. So now I will give my save of the day, goal of the day, and moment of the day. And so my save of the day, I had two noted, but I will go with I'll go with this one. So I'll go with the Madri header that I mentioned earlier. So the 15th minute of the France match, Norway has a corner. They hit it to the near post. It is a fantastic flick on. And Madri, who is on the near post, I'm a huge proponent of having people on the post defending corners. She gets a header onto it and flicks it over the crossbar. And again, I highlighted this a few minutes ago. By her flicking it out of play, not only does she, it's going on target, but the goalkeeper may have been there to make the save. But again, the goalkeeper, you could tell by the way she had her hands positioned, was that she was not going to catch the ball, and that ball was going to be parried out into a dangerous area. And, you don't know what could have happened. It could have resulted in a Norway goal, and that really saved a goal in two ways for France. So that was my save of the day. Madri, who is a defender, she's not the goalkeeper, but still getting save of the day. My goal of the day is that Oshuola goal that we mentioned earlier, which was a fantastic counter. Okeke does well to round her defender, plays a superbly weighted and angled ball in for Oshuola to hold off the defender, round the goalkeeper, and finish from the tight angle. So that is my goal of the day. And my moment of the day is the 63rd minute against Spain and Germany. Oh, we're hitting all three matches here. I'm just realizing that as I'm talking. Exciting times. My moment of the day is the 63rd minute when the referee decides that Schwers was not a red card, that which she commits the foul. I referenced it earlier, but the foul on Lucia Garcia, who is in one-on-one on the goalkeeper, she takes a fantastic touch. It's not like the ball had gotten away from her. That should have been a red card and could have really altered the match. And, the fact that she was given a yellow is my moment of the day because it had profound impact the rest of that. Let me get to Jeff's question now. Jeff, thank you so much for being here and interacting with us. My question, which player of whom you knew very little or nothing about before the tournament would you like your club to sign? Since Matt already touched on Graham Hansen, who I've been very impressed with, I'm going to say Rose Lavelle. So even though I am an American fan and even though I follow the team, I had only heard about Rose Lavelle. I hadn't been watching the U.S. women's national team much before this tournament, and I had never seen her play before, but I had heard great things and knew she was a playmaker. And I know it was just against Thailand, but I really enjoyed her game. I touched on it on yesterday's podcast. She's got that weird control move where she touches the ball a half step before you expect her to, and it really sort of enables her to keep control, and it wrong foots defenders. And so she is the player that I would want my club to sign, and someone who I knew very little about before the tournament started. So let's talk about tomorrow's matches at this point. And so we have two matches going on. We have Australia. I don't think that's the second game. So let me get the timing right. No, we have Australia versus Brazil as the early match, and that is at noon. So it's not super early. Me on the West Coast, I get to sleep in a little bit. Noon Eastern Standard Time. And then the second match of the day, we have South Africa taking on China, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In the Australia versus Brazil match, I am very interested to see how Australia responds to going, to losing against Italy. They were one of the pre-tournament sort of dark horses, Australia was, and they conceded late in 94th or 95th minute to lose against Italy, and it'll be interesting to see if they bounce back. Conversely, Brazil came out and was in a poor run of form coming into this tournament, played a relatively weak Jamaican side, but prevailed 3-0, looked convincing in it, looked like Cristiane, stepped up in Marta's absence. It'll be interesting to see if they try to bring Marta back for this, and I'm going to be keeping an eye out to see how Sam Kerr plays, because I thought she played well in the first half. between Australia and Italy, but didn't necessarily have much of an impact in the second half outside of, towards the end of the game, the 85th to 95th minute, Kerr got involved again, but she went through a long period of that game where she was not involved. Meanwhile, South Africa versus China, both these sides lost their opening matches. South Africa looked dangerous on the counter, and China looked just physically dangerous. They were just out for blood against Germany. I'm going to be interested to see if they have that same aggressive style, China I'm speaking about, in this match against South Africa, or if that was saved for Germany and they try to do a different style. But oh man, it's tough to call both these matches actually. So I think they're both evenly matched up. I will give the slight edge to Australia and the slight edge to China, but these should be relatively close. I wouldn't expect any blowouts tomorrow. And the player I'm going to be looking out for, I'll give you two since Matt's not here, and they're both going to be playing in the Australia versus Brazil match. I thought Debinha for Brazil was really involved, and she just couldn't get a goal because the Jamaican goalkeeper was standing on her head and denied her multiple times. But I was impressed with Debinha. Keep an eye out for her. And then Sam Kerr, I already mentioned her earlier, but again, she looked influential in the first half of Australia versus Italy and sort of disappeared for a long stretch in the second half. I expect her to be more involved, and so I'm keeping my eye out for her tomorrow. That is it. That has been your day 6 recap of the 2019 World Cup. Thank you so much for being here and listening to me talk. And thank you to Matt for being here and chatting. If you like what we're doing here, please consider rating us on whatever podcasting platform you're listening to us on. If you want to get in contact with us, at BT Soccer Pod on Twitter, or email bros.talking.soccer@gmail.com. Make sure to follow us on there. We have a Slack channel where we're interacting with soccer fans all over the world about a variety of different things happening in the soccer world: men's game, women's game, World Cups, domestic league play, transfers, all of that stuff. Again, it's free to join. So send an email or a tweet at us and we'll get you added to that. Check out our website, brostalkingsoccer.com. You can read about myself, my two brothers who usually are on this podcast with me. You can check out some of our past episodes. You can see some of our YouTube videos. So in addition to this, we do MLS videos, kind of previewing what's going to happen for MLS matches. And then we have a store where you can buy some of our merch. We have a long sleeve tee and a hoodie, and we'll be adding a t-shirt in the not too distant future. That is it for all of this. I'm excited for tomorrow. We have 2 matches, so day 6 recap is complete. Thank you so much for being here and listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Say, everybody.